welcome to the French Curiosity Club Mumbai. Every month we invite you to meet an ambitious, talented, funny or all-in-one woman who will share her idea about a subject she's passionate about. This relaxed meeting is an opportunity for us curious women to gain insight and inspiration. Today we have the pleasure to meet Radhika in her Yogacara Institute in Bandra. Radhika will tell us everything about how yoga changed her life. Hello Radhika, it's a real pleasure to have you for our monthly French Curiosity Mumbai rendezvous. You start your career in the US. How come you are now in India?
So I essentially left my life in San Francisco because I decided to leave my marriage. I had two very young children, aged 1 and 7. And I wanted them to grow up in an environment where I could give them the maximum amount of support and love without me compromising my life. So India was definitely the best solution for me because my family lives here and I have lots of great friends. And while I was going through a very, very difficult time, I understood that how I dealt with my difficulty was really based on the choices I made. And the choices I made would determine whether I sailed through my difficulty or had a hard time with it. And while I was working as a brand director in India, I'd spent most of my career in the United States. I noticed how stressed and anxious everybody was. And then when the global CEO came in, he started talking about revenues times X. I already had a team that was exhausted, who felt that they were giving it their best. And at that moment, I sort of had my aha moment. And I decided that I had gained so much knowledge practicing yoga over many, many years that it was time for me to do something different in my life. So I actually made a very scary choice. I quit my job and I started a very small yoga studio on the ocean, beautiful, beautiful space. And then actually it was my students that started pushing me and saying, Radhika, you can't just be teaching yoga, you need to develop this into a wellness model. And then I decided to go out and explore the ancient Indian medical science called Ayurveda. And I was very clear that I wanted to help revive the authentic and ancient holistic sciences of India like yoga and Ayurveda. So I was very determined, given the difficulties that I had gone through personally, working in the corporate world and seeing how unhappy and stressed and anxious everybody was, to try and bring these sciences to the masses so that they could start living their lives in a much more fulfilling and happy manner.
I cannot even imagine how much courage it takes to completely shift your life as you did. Did yoga help you through this journey?
Yoga has been the strong pillar in my life and it has changed me completely. Before I met B.K.S. Iyengar, my guru and the yoga legend, I was very chaotic. In fact, emotionally, I was not in a very strong place. And after I started Iyengar Yoga, I started to understand that there is a way that I could live my life in a better manner. So the first lesson that I actually learned from the life practice of yoga is that every single one of us lives in a physical environment that's very challenging, impermanent, and uncertain. But if you actually look at the way the human being lives their life, we live our lives hoping that nothing is ever going to change. When we're hit with challenges, we get very stressed, we get very anxious, and we spend our entire lives looking at other people and situations to give us the peace and happiness that we are looking for. So the first level of awareness in the yogic practice is to understand the impermanence of life around us. This doesn't mean yoga is not trying to tell us that we shouldn't live our lives and be happy. But really what yoga is telling us is that things keep changing. So if I'm peaceful one day, there will be difficulty in my life. If I'm unhealthy one day, I will be healthy again. So nature shows this to us in many, many different ways. There's sunrise, sunset, high tide, low tide. There's birth and there's death. And in the same token, really what yoga tries to explain to us, that when we are experiencing one state, it's just a question of time before the other state arises. But as long as the human being we keep resisting life, When things don't go our way, we get very stressed, we get very anxious and very frustrated, and we get stuck with a very chaotic mind and emotions that are all over the place, and we keep living our lives hoping that tomorrow is going to be a better day and a better day. Really, what yoga is trying to tell us is that every single day of our life is important, and that we do have the capability to live our lives with fullness, but we need to learn how. We have the capability to live our lives with a lot more intelligence and wisdom, but we just know how to unlock the door that gives us the opportunity to live with a lot more awareness. So yes, yoga has made me a much more clear, strong and resilient human being. And at one point in my life, if things were difficult, I would fall apart. And now when life is difficult, I have a very good attitude, almost like bring it on, because I know I have the capability to resolve my problems if I just allow myself to do it in a more balanced manner.
Your book is called Just Breathe. Is that one of the key to unlock the door you were talking about?
Yes. So in fact, the breath is by far the most powerful tool to help us create transformation in our lives. And let me explain why. If you think about it, your breath cannot happen in the future, and it cannot happen in the past. Your breath only happens right here, right now. But what do all of us do? We spend our entire lives clinging on to people and situations that are changing. They're moving all the time to bring us stability. But when we learn how to train the mind to focus on the breath has the amazing power to bring a mind that is chaotic and dreaming into the present moment. And when you learn to train the mind to focus with the breath, suddenly you start to experience this quality of relaxation, of awareness, of being present. If I am sitting here right now and I confront something that I don't like, my mind comes in and it pulls me away into an imaginary world and it starts storytelling. The stories are so big, so grandiose that I start to believe those stories, and I no longer am living my life sitting right here, right now, but I start moving into that imaginary world and I start viewing my world from that altered state. It's almost like I have been hypnotized. And then based on my belief systems that I have created at that time, I will then lead my life. So really what yoga is saying, that the danger and our anxiety and our pain happens when we move into that imaginary world. So what the yogic practice is trying to do is to get us to stay rooted right here, right now. So that it doesn't matter what we are confronted with, difficulty or pleasure. We're able to see the situation clearly without the imagination coming in, for example. And we look at the situation and we say, I cannot change the situation is what it is, the person is what they are. But certainly, I can make choices that enables me to deal with the person or the situation in a manner that supports my well-being. So really what yoga is telling us is live each moment of your life fully. Be present, be alert, and this is how the breath begins to play a very important role in our life. The more I breathe consciously, the more I feel my breath, then my mind starts to transform. Instead of the mind running away, the mind comes back to the present, and we start to notice a tremendous change in the way we view all our life situations.
Thanks, Radhika, for giving us such a deep insight of your yoga belief and teaching.
Sure.
Let me ask you some question about you. What is your biggest dream?
Well, my biggest dream is to bring wellness to every single human being so that people can experience what it feels like to live a life with good mental, physical and emotional health. Because obviously the difference between someone who is not in a good place living their life versus someone who feels wonderful about themselves is what allows us to reach our full human potential or not.
And which woman inspired you?
So when I moved back to India, my father was he was helping a woman named Sister Lucy. And Sister Lucy came from a middle class background, and she wasn't earning a lot of money, but she decided that she was going to give up her life to build a home for women that had been abused. And when she made this decision, she did not have any money to realize her dream. And today Maher it means women's home. It's a very large organization, an NGO, where she has managed to take in these women with their children, and she helps rehabilitate them back into society. So I saw a tremendous amount of resilience, courage, discipline, compassion, generosity, and those were instrumental qualities for me in my journey as I left, a high-paying job with 2 young children, and I wanted to raise them. So she was a great inspiration for me in those years and continues to be.
It's funny because I remind in one of your class, I heard that you say something like, we cannot change people, but we can inspire them.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what we are trying to do with the French Curiosity
Change
Club.
comes from, the best change is the change that evolves from within us.
Now, a more casual question. What do you think about France?
So I love France. I think it's a beautiful, ancient, very proud culture, and the French people are lovely. They have very refined, elevated senses. And of course, I have lots of wonderful French students that come to my Wellness Institute, and I always look forward to teaching them because they're so appreciative of our wonderful ancient sciences in India, and they come here to learn. So the experience of teaching them is brilliant.
Nice. So just before finishing our discussion, I want to thank you for sharing your experience with us. I wish you all the best and all the best for Yogacara. And we will finish with the simple question, what is your mantra?
My mantra is mindful living. It's about developing the quality of awareness and being present so that we can all live our lives in a much more fulfilling and satisfying manner. We can't change the physical environment. The physical environment is constantly changing, but we can change ourselves and the manner in which we approach our lives. So really the most important concept behind mindful living is twofold. One is using the breathing practices to start calming the mind so that the mind can become clear. And once we master this, then moving into the meditation practices to remove the confusion of the mind. So as B.K.S. Iyengar, my guru, used to say, yoga is like music. The rhythm of the body, the melody of the mind, and the harmony of the soul creates the symphony of life. So really what he's talking about is the alignment of the mind, the body, the emotions, and the actions. And this is what allows us, this inner journey allows us to live a much more clear life where you start to understand, who am I? What do I want to do? What is meaningful to me? And suddenly the symphony comes together, which means all the puzzles of your life come together and you're able to move forward in a much more fulfilling manner.